So we'll begin by calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. And we'll start with the adoption of the agenda. Any errors? Oh, sorry. We're almost starting off with minutes here. It's been a long day already. Anything to add to the agenda?
No, your worship, just budget discussions.
Councilor Cook.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And right after we adopted that agenda, I'm going to ask for that we're going to go to the operating spot first. And Mr. Frank, I'll turn it over to you because we have a member online that's joining us. So while the tech gods are holding us in the planet in alignment, we actually have a connection. We should do that first.
Your worship, members of council, before I go into the operating budget for the agricultural services section, I would like to introduce formally Victoria Chan, who is our new Director of Corporate Services. She officially starts tomorrow, however, she arrived early so that she can take in the budget deliberations, and she will be joining us in the afternoon at the council. So.
Well, welcome aboard. Do you want to do introductions to everybody, or do you want to?
We formally introduced ourselves, but it's up to you, your worship.
Okay. Well, we might as well do it really quick here, so we'll start with Councillor Williams.
Devin Williams, Councillor for Forest Assembly, Division 7.
Bruce Prestige, Councillor for Blue Ridge, Division 5.
Dave Cush, Division 1 in Thomo.
And I'm John Burrows, I'm the Reeve.
I'm Peter Gilkin. I'm Division 6, Goose Lake, Goose Lake, Freeman River.
Jeremy Wilhelm, Whitecourt East.
Alan Dean, Whitecourt Central.
Nice to meet you all.
So welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. This is a kind of a tricky time to start right at budget, but okay.
Your worship, members of council, I'll preliminary go through the introduction of the budget, how it was formulated, and then as the Reeve had indicated earlier, that we have Don Fortin, our agricultural services manager, online, and if council can move to their operating budget, if they have any questions directed to Dawn, she would be more than willing to answer some of the details surrounding her budget. So just to begin the introduction into this, first of all, I have to acknowledge Mr. World, who was our consultant, who had previous engagements for the month of December. Worked very diligently to prepare this budget binder that you've been presented with, as well as the slides that have some of the further details and notes related to the budget. The budget was prepared in accordance with your strategic plan, as well as your preliminary budget discussions that you had earlier this year. And always keeping in mind the financial recovery plan that council adopted 3 years ago. So we've made sure that we've tried to formulate the budget based on the principles that the recovery plan had, a 3% tax increase with a 1% expenditure increase, and for the most part, we were able to achieve that with a 1.19% expenditure increase. And if you in your presentation, and I can get into the details more in regards to that. However, if you do still want to get to the 1% expenditure there is the slide where we would have to remove approximately $59,000 from the operating budget to meet our goal. We balanced the amount based on the true expenditures that we believe is what we need to operate in 2023. However, council, based on their discussions tonight and over on Thursday, could make adjustments to that as well. The capital budget has also remained what council did talk about previously in their budget discussions, approximately 3.77 million with 770,000 coming from the uncollectible allowance rearrangement and the priorities that have been identified previously in that, and we'll can go further into details with that. The only other thing that I do need to indicate to council that in the slide that shows the overall revenue of the budget, and that's this one here, there is an increase based on some of the expenditures, but we've offset that expenditures either by additional revenue, and the additional revenue is coming from some of the interest rates that we've received and the money that is in our accounts, so offsetting those costs, or additional expenditures that have fallen from the budget from the previous year, and we reinvest them into the expenditures this year. So with that, I'll pause, and if council has any general questions, can ask that.
Any general questions? Councilor Dean?
Yeah, just the question I have is relating to how this budget document, how we're gonna go through it. Are we going through it tab by tab, page by page? What exactly is the plan?
Your worship, members of council, through to Councilor Dean, that is strictly at your discretion. What I do have, I anticipated half the staff here tonight because we do have another budget meeting available on Thursday with going through some of the tabs, but based on questions. You've got the details with explanations as well as some of the PowerPoint slides and highlights that might have answered some of your questions, but staff is here available for you to ask specific questions on any of the operating or capital expenditures or operating expenditures as well. So it's a flexibility.
Right, Councilor Dean, then Councilor.
Okay, so just to follow up, what I'm hearing you say is those tabs are gonna be opened up on an as-need basis. Basically, if there's questions, then we'll go to that section and we'd answer the question.
Your worship, through to Councilor Dean, we're prepared to go through line by, go through the budget by each department, and if there are specific questions, we're prepared. However, if there is none, we're not here to waste council's time.
Thank you.
Councilor Wilhelm.
My question was just on the actuals from 2022. What are those to date as? Have you projected for the end of the year, or is it as of November 30th?
October 31st. The land can answer that for me.
It's up to date with the forecast. Some of the expense will be forecast to the end of the year.
So those expenditures are anticipated with forecasts, so they're up to date when they were printed with forecasts put in. there.
The only reason I'd asked was just, I wanted to know how our actuals met up with our budgets, and I wasn't sure if it was, we still had 2 months remaining left
Yeah.
to account for or not, so, thank you.
Okay, any further questions from council before we? Okay,
So your worship, members of council, we do have a member of our administration team online, Don Fortin, our manager of Ag Services. The section in your budget is towards the back of the budget, after planning and development, so three quarters way down there. Again, there is a department overview in regards to the programs and services that are provided, and Don's prepared to ask or answer any questions that council may have of the budget. And Don, you can hear us?
Yes, I can.
Gord, can you put it to the slides of Ag Services?
Oh, can I? Yes, I can.
40, page 40.
Yeah, way easier doing this this way.
There you go. Thank you.
Did you say it was page 40?
On the presentation, on the slides, yes, sir.
Thanks.
does Don have a specific presentation on this, or is it just?
No, well, your worship, members of council, what all staff department members prepared their overview of the department summary as well as their strategic priorities and initiatives, which are in your highlighted area and was part of your package. We can go through those as well. They are reflected in the budget. The third slide in this case was added by Mr. World in regards to highlighting the changes overall to the budget where some of the significant changes were made. And for the most part, the change that was made to the Agricultural Service Board was a $5,000 increase to VSI. There were other things changed within the budget, but they were, funds were just reallocated.
Any questions to that motion?
I have no questions because we went through this at the Ag Service Board level, and I found it to be in alignment with what our strategic goals and what our priorities are.
Okay, Councilor Cush.
I was say, if anybody's tuned in and watched this, it doesn't have the numbers. I mean, the Ag Service in general is going just about a $10,000 increase from 22 to 23, and the majority of that is just the increase in the VSI. There's not really a whole lot of changes to this budget over the last, I don't know, multiple years. It's been pretty stagnant. Dawn's been doing pretty good at working in without a whole lot of extra given to her, so.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
have an accounting question. And, I'm not sure if it should be directed to Dawn or to maybe to the CAO. Just when you're looking at the ag services overall, and this is gonna be on multiple items, so if you answer for this one, it's gonna answer my question for that item for the majority of them, but, so it'd be page 101, it's the one right after the main summary, department over, summary. Line item 1-900 transfers, that $255,000 that's transferred from reserves, is that just simply to cover, like, the difference between the revenue generated from Ag Services Board and the expenses, or how does that line item work, just for my understanding?
So you're talking on the very first page, 1-900?
Yeah, 1-900.
So the actual $255,000 in, Dawn, correct me if I'm wrong, if that was the chemical that was carried over from 2021, was it?
Pardon me. That would have been, yes, partially the chemical, but then also we had some funds from a previous grant also that was carried through.
So that makes up
And
the,
Yeah, that would have been for the Mountain Pine Beetle grant.
Okay, so it's just an accounting item then, so it was put into capital reserves and then pulled back out and
That's
carried
correct.
over. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
Anything else?
Everything else looks good.
I don't see anything else from council, so I wanna keep going, Mr. Frank.
Your worship, members of council, Dawn, thank you very much for your participation and your evening.
You're
we'll
welcome.
just-
Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Don.
So your worship, members of council, we can continue going back to, starting at page 1 of the operation budget, or we can move back into the capital as per the slides that have been identified in your book as the beginning.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
We made that.
So your worship, members of council, earlier this year, you had a budget session which you identified or administration recommended a number of capital projects that were identified, and then in your budget binder, there is a sheet on capital, and we've identified those projects being a total of $3.770 million. So the first projects are not in priority, but are on a required basis. And then as you go down on the list, they just meet the criteria that it was established by council previously. So those are the numbers that have been identified. There is one correction, or when we get into the operating budget, about the $75,000 for the AVPA. That money has been removed from the budget, and because as you'll see in your council meeting tomorrow, there's enough funds in this year's budget to undertake that project. So again, we can go through any of the items that were identified if required, and I should go to the slide I keep forgetting.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilor D.
Just help me out here, this is a question of council. When we had our budget meeting in late October, the one that I joined virtually. And we'd gone over the capital wish list and the administrative wish list, if you will. I thought one of the takeaways, as recommended, I believe by Councilor Woodholm, was rather than having estimates, so instead of 525,000, that there were going to be actual quotes. Am I remembering that right, or am I remembering that wrong? Okay. So if that's the case, if that was the ask, I see these are still estimates. Do we have more hard and fast numbers?
Your worship, members of council, unfortunately, you can't get hard and fast numbers. You can get, again, estimates based on discussions with the people that put it together, but until the actual tender goes out, right? And I'll allow Director of Infrastructure to speak with any regards to any of the items that you might have got out and got for.
So through
Councillor Prestige, go ahead.
I understand with getting the estimates, but I think what council would like to see is how did you come to those estimates? What brought you to a number of 450 or 535? Like, what was the process to get to that number? And, it could be you just pulled it out of the sky, or you have documentation.
And to be clear, I think the reason that this flagged more than anything right now is the supply chain issues and all rapid inflation that's going on around vehicle pricing. It's so difficult to nail down.
Yeah, what I'm getting at is, you come to us with an estimate, and when it comes to actually purchase the vehicle, we could be $100,000 out on it, and then you can't do anything. But it would be nice to be able to tie these numbers to something.
Sorry, you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say through the chair to council, the bulk of these numbers are discussions we had with suppliers. They're not gonna give us a quote, as CEO Frank said, until the tender comes out, but they give us ballpark numbers. Some of these, for instance, bridge replacements, engineering, those are numbers that we have had for about a year based on the engineers that do that work. So we got quotes on some of this stuff already.
Okay. And the vehicle, to be clear, the vehicle's ideas is how old?
Sorry?
How old is the vehicle information?
That would have been late summer, early fall.
Okay. Councillor Culkin.
Yeah, I express, through the chair to infrastructure, whoever came up with these numbers, I express the concern over the roof replacements on both the airport and the old Blue Ridge Fire Hall. And I actually, to verify my concern about it, I did the research thing. I measured it because I used to do this kind of work. I got a complete breakdown of fascia, roof jacks for the chimneys, vents, the tin shingles off, disposed of, and the labor to reinstall the roof. And it was under half the price today of what is in this budget. So for me, I struggle a little bit with saying, yeah, we can allocate this much money. And even if I put a 10% contingency in, I'm still at $10,000 less than what the budget number shows here, and that's today's quote. And so if I'm a contractor and we approve this budget, I've done this. I've looked at what budgets were and say, you know what, I can make some money here. That's how it works. So for, you know, when we do these things, we should be relatively close. And that took me 20 minutes to do, just to get a, you know, ballpark figure. So I'm a bit concerned that on some of these smaller items, I'm not saying that you wouldn't send it out to tender and then come in under budget. What I'm saying is it gives an opportunity for somebody who looks at this to say, hey, you know what, this is where my quote's gonna be because this is how much money they have available. And so, you know, I do have a concern that maybe the same as Councillor Prestige, that we need to be a little bit more current on what these estimates are. And I don't think it, you know, in that particular case, it didn't take me very long to do.
Mr. Bichon?
Through the chair, Council Colkin. So for these roofs, we estimated for metal roofs. And we have to put a contingency in there because especially, for instance, on the Blue Ridge Old Fire Hall, we don't know what we're gonna find when we open that up. So, yeah, we put some allowances in there, but I'm not worried about contractors seeing these numbers. Because when we go out for pricing, it is competitive. So I'm not too worried about them inflating their prices.
Okay. Anything else from council? Councillor Prestige?
Through the chair to administration, I really like how you did the budget, laid out all the information for each item. I think that's very well done. Thank you.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, just so, again, a budget is an estimate and a snapshot in time. In your procurement policy, we do follow certain guidelines in regards to when do we ask for quotes, tenders, and then when tenders are issued, we bring them back when they're $100,000 or more to council for approval. So all those checks and balances are in place. And again, if the item is over budget, we come back to council for consideration. And unfortunately, we believe these are the best estimates that we have at this point in time. Could they change? You know, if you don't issue the tender for the roof until the fall, right? You may have a different price than if you don't do it first thing in the spring, right? And I know when contractors are looking for work for pavement or road construction, the earlier you can get it out so that they have work, right? And the later you go, the higher the price tends to be, because they either have work or they're looking for work.
I'll recognize Councillor Colkin and then Councillor Wilhelm in a second here. I just have one question on the capital budget, and I can't remember whether this was in the, I thought it was in the capital. Did we not have the airport vicinity plan in the capital?
We did, and we also had it in the operation, but because of the fact that the tender came in, we had money in this year's budget, and the money came with, or the tender came within the existing budget. We removed those two projects from capital and operating for 2023. We're going to cover the project in the 2022 budget.
Thank you. Councillor Wilhelm?
Mine was just for anyone watching and watching the data up there. The carry forward estimate is unspent capital budgetary items that are being carried over to this year, right? Just to make sure I'm understanding it
Yeah,
properly.
either they're committed, right? Or they are carried over because the project has started and, or will be finished in 2023.
Thank you.
Councillor Colkin?
Yeah, and I, through the chair to the infrastructure, I'd like to qualify that, in all fairness, I did go through some of the old budget and then what happened. And there were lots of cases where you came in under budget, which is kind of what I would assume will happen in a lot of these cases. In some cases, they came in over budget. So I guess the question for me always will be, I need to make information on really good data, because when it comes in over budget, that's when we get hung for it, and because that's our responsibility. So I think in all fairness, there's been a lot of cases where it's been quoted and it came in under budget, and that's probably just a good sign that you guys are doing your job. So.
Okay. No hands up over there? Okay. Mr. Ring?
Yeah, so your worship, members of council, if there are no questions in regards to, any further questions in regards to the capital budget, we can move into the operating budget.
Don't see anything further, let's go to the operating.
So the first slide that you received in your package, not in your budget details, is the overall budget number increase of 3% for revenue was as a result of the actual revenue that is in taxes and accounts for that. And so that results in a 3.8% increase based on the budget comparison. So what you see on the thing is the 22 budget, but the actual number was higher, and as a result comes in at 3.8%.
Okay.
The other thing is interest. We're anticipating approximately a little under $600,000 in our interest based on our conservative investments, and the most we can invest in is basically GICs. So that's the riskiest stuff that we can do, so it's guaranteed. And we're not at the point where we can put money away for a longer period. However, Mr. World and I and Ms. Chan and I will be having a discussion that we'll look at in the new year, where we'll have an opportunity to maybe put money away for 180 days. The bank that we presently bank with is ATB, is very competitive in their rates. Mr. World did a comparison before he left, and ATB still has the highest rates for us, and we're not getting a lot of difference between 30, 60, and 180 days. So, and then Mr. World also said, because we anticipate another increase tomorrow, that Ms. Chan would be re-looking at that in early January. So based on that, his estimate is conservative on that, so you could have higher revenue. He did reduce the recovery of taxes based on his analysis, and I'm talking Mr. World in regards to what we believe we need to write off for next year. So he lowered that by $151,000. And then the grants that are coming have been lowered based on what we have confirmed grants coming in. And Ms. Chan doesn't know this, but we will have a meeting in early January to set up trying to confirm our 2018 flooding emergency management recovery funds. So we're hoping to get that money in the bank early January.
And that's from 2018. Moving at the speed of government.
So the next slide, just,
Just one second, we've
sorry.
got a question, Council Preston.
Through the chair to Ward, on the interest rate, we're getting more interest on our money, but are debentures at a fixed rate?
fixed rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor
But
Wilhelm.
remember, you're gonna borrow for the paving, sorry, your worship, council. You are going to borrow for Horse Creek Road, and that will cost you more money.
So there were a couple items, looking in the operating budget that it kind of stood out to me, and you've answered one of them, which was regards to the interest income. So that's obviously has to do with our GIC investment and the interest income that we've generated from that. But there were a couple other ones that I couldn't, so I went through the different sections trying to see if I could figure out where the money could have possibly have changed by myself. So rather, I'm just gonna ask you guys, because you might have an answer for me. So you're looking underneath, other revenue owned sources. And you've got a line item called miscellaneous revenue. So this will be this is under object code summary.
This is $1,200.
Okay, object code summary page.
Page 2. So we've got under miscellaneous revenue, our actual for 2021 was 42,000. Our actual for 2022 was 165,000. And we had a budget of 135, but now our budget is 1,200 for 2023. I'm just wondering, is it because that revenue has been recoded to something else, or how does that work? Because that's a significant difference between the budgeted line item for 2022 and 2023. So I'm just wondering where that is it reallocated somewhere, or how does that work?
And you were on page 2 of 7, did you
Page
say?
2 of 7, yeah.
And you were miscellaneous revenue?
Yeah.
Budget 123,770. That's the line?
Yeah, that was the line, yeah.
And we've gone down to 100 miscellaneous revenue. What is miscellaneous?
Yeah, so you've gone from 123,000 to 1,200. So I'm just wondering what that is.
Lan? So, for council, Lan is our accountant, so she works with, be working directly with Victoria and, on the budget and the, GL. And Lan, if you wanna just come up here and sit at the, no, she's the person in the background all the time. Do you have an answer?
Yes, it is the log sale at the airport.
Okay.
So we don't expect to have that in 2023.
Okay.
But it was budgeted for 2022.
Okay. That answers my question.
So, previous administration, budgeted for a lot sale, anticipating that we would sell some lots, and we've now said we take that out of there because if that's just newfound revenue, if we sell anything, and then we put it back into reserves and then pull it out of reserves when council needs a project.
Okay. And it's funny, Lan, you're hiding back there, but don't be afraid of us. And I just wanted to remind council when we're asking questions of admin, to ask them through the chair, just so that we're not intimidating our staff here. It's really nice to have staff here to answer questions, so we just want to make sure that you guys understand we appreciate it, and yeah, we've got some tough questions to ask, but it's not meant to be in a fashion that's intimidating, so please direct your questions through the chair. Councillor Cush.
It's through to the CAO, page 407 on the same thing here. Contracted services, I was just trying to figure out your, about $1 million difference between what we budgeted in 22 and 23. Was that, just wondering what the extra million we're budgeting on there, so was that the difference from the taxes we were rolling back in, or?
What line is that, Dave?
Top line.
That says page 47, and 2 pages from back here, that says contracted services. 2022, we budgeted 4.1 million, 2023 budgeted 5.1 million.
That's the total.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why the $1 million difference is all between the 2 years.
Yeah, so if you go back to the previous page and under, if you start with the travel and subsistence, that item is up, right? So if you keep going back and forth to the items, mileage, council is becoming more active in attending meetings in person. Membership conference fees, again, attendance is up. The advertising is based on some new programs or some items that were identified in the preliminary budget, including the new, what are we calling it, Joan or Heather? The new program for the, I want to say seniors, but.
Oh, the bursaries, yeah. The bursaries as well as that, the income low.
Low income. That's identified as well. Training and education is up, and we talk about that in one of our slides too. And I'm just trying to see where else.
$300,000 in leases.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question, was what was.
Is that the graders, or is that the graders are coming out of a separate section?
Sorry, I did miss the question, Your Worship.
I'm just
Councilor Williams?
through the chair. Leases are up 300,000 in that category.
Yeah.
So is that the 2 leased graders? That's what that falls under?
That is correct.
That's a big portion.
Councilor Dean?
Through the chair to admin, also on page 2 of 7 in this same section, for revenue, provincial grants are down almost $2 million year over year. Can you explain that?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Dean, Ms. Kennedy will provide you with an answer.
Go ahead, Ms. Kennedy.
We had carry forward funds that were previous years that we had to report on, so then we got the money. I think that was about 1.143 last year, so that came through. And then as well, what Andrew has put in for 2023 is the MSI and the 2023 for gas tax. We have another year of gas tax that we've applied for that should come through on this year. It's in kind of, I guess, process that'll show up for 2023. And it also doesn't include some of the STIP grants that Andre has applied for, because we don't know if we're gonna get those approved, because we've just begun that process. Whereas 2022 does have the STIP grant money.
And-
So we should get more money.
And this,
Yeah.
just so that council's aware, this was an issue when we first came forward, was if we were expecting grant money, it was in the budget. And oftentimes, we didn't get the grant that we had expected, it didn't come through, it didn't get applied in a year, and we ended up short. So this is a method of kind of not counting your chickens before they're hatched, I guess, to put it to bed in plain English. Go ahead.
And further that, to the chair and to council, the MSI is down quite a bit. It's only, I think it was 900 and something this year, and it'll be the same next year, where it was considerably more in years previous. So this is the last year, 2023 for the MSI, and then it's starting the new program. So hopefully we'll end up getting more money. I'm not sure, but it was almost like they took 1 year and then cut it in half and gave it to us this year and last year, so it's
Right.
definitely shrunk.
They front-ended it.
Yeah.
It's LGFF now, and
Yeah.
I can't imagine what the FF stands for, but, Counselor Wilhelm.
Through the chair to admin, I think that, and we had done this during one of the budget discussions, but it, just for, to help you guys and to help us, I think, you know, you have a margin over here. If there are any large outliers that happen, if you put a small note in there why there's such a large change between year over year, it probably would essentially prevent us, or not prevent us, but answer a lot of questions that we would need to have. Like, not that this discussion isn't great, but it would, if that little note was in there, it'd be like, oh, that makes sense. I don't need to ask that. Just for future budget discussions.
Your worship, through to Councillor Wilhelm, I believe that's an excellent suggestion. The answer, however, is our computer software won't allow us to do that, so.
Okay.
Unless we manually went in there and did that that explanation that you want. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Okay, that's no problem. I just.
Okay, anyone else? Counselor Copeland.
Yeah, I just had a question on, when I was looking at the capital, I noticed that the budgeting has consistently gone down for the engineering. And there's only 45,500 in the budget for 2023. Is that just because there's less projects on it, or is that because some of them have already been engineered and we're doing the work in 23?
Through the chair to Council Colkin, the last couple of years we've had, and this covers general engineering, so the last couple of years we've had different things that we've been aware of that we've required engineering. I think we're to the point where we don't foresee anything big, so that's why we were able to drop that amount.
Okay, thank you.
And I only have one last question here. Can somebody explain to me what operating expense recovery pool is? Just so I know.
Page?
Sorry, that's page 4. So it's, you know, in 2021 it was $22. In 2022 it was negative 1.9 million. And we budgeted negative 2.3 million for 2023. I just, for future reference, so I don't have to ask about it again.
Your worship, members of council and land has the answer.
Excellent. Go ahead, Lan. You can
So
come and
that
sit at the desk. Really, we don't bite or anything.
She's not.
Come on.
Now I'm on the spot.
So it is the equipment costing, the offset for the equipment costing. It just net out to the cost recovery pool. So all the equipment we expend and we cost it to the whole county, and then this is the offset of the, so it's the internal costing
Okay.
for equipment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So-
So it, at the end, it's net out to zero. We
Is
just
that-
want to cost it out to the proper department, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
to you, Mr. Frank, I guess then, is that our cost to reserve replacement for the equipment as we're
No.
charging the fee on the machine?
Your worship, members of council, again, the one thing when we did the financial recovery plan, we indicated no, at this time, no funds would go out of reserves to fund any of the expenditures. So we're any capital items or equipment costing would come within the existing budget. So the formula that has now been arrived at for each piece of equipment is without a capital replacement component. That's one thing that we eventually would need to do. So, so instead of, say, for example, $22 an hour for a piece of equipment, then $3 an hour should go for equipment replacement. And then goes into reserve, and then when you replace that equipment in 5 years, there's money from the reserves to do that. To date, we're just simply costing out that equipment at cost.
Is that planned for?
After 2024, when the financial recovery plan is complete, again, Mr. World and I, and again, Ms. Chan is getting a very good education of our financial situation. But again, when Mr. World comes back, we will have a conversation with Ms. Chan in 2024. I'm an optimist that believes that we can complete our financial recovery by the end of 2023. However, Mr. World takes a conservative approach, right? And believes that we have to go one more year before we can start doing that.
Which was the 5-year plan all along.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Councillor Kulkin.
Okay, I just had one more question on this section, and that was, I don't quite understand, what is billable expenses? Because there was nothing in the budget in 22. And in, you know, it's been all over the place. I'm just curious as to what that is. So on page
See,
4.
this is why we had you come up to the.
All you have to do is say, Your Worship, through to Councillor Coken.
To the chair of the Council Cogan. Answer your question is the billable expenses. It is the lead core chargeback. We did not put it. It's a miscoding in the budget in 2022.
Okay.
It was coded somewhere else. So we just want to correcting the coding for 2023. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the
Thank you.
highway contract
The
then?
highway, contract, the lead core back.
Oh, okay.
658.
658.
33.
Right.
There's three.
661, 658, and 33.
Thank you.
Councillor Dean.
Yeah, looking at page 3 of 7 in the same section, the very bottom, talking about euthanasia.
I noticed that.
Where is that staff or is that council?
That's,
That's
Your Worship, through to Councillor Dean.
Don't worry, it said 0 for
Neither.
23.
It's simply we used to have a contract with the local vet. However, with the contract with the Lac St. Anne County with Highway Patrol, they actually look after our dog complaints, and they will pick up the dog and transport them to a rescue place in, I believe it's in San Gudo, but I'm not quite sure. So that there's no costs associated anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we don't put any of our animals down. They take their animals to a rescue.
It's, so I have a question for you, because I was actually looking at the boarding and euthanasia line, and the 3-year average. So that you've got the actual for 2021, actual for 2022. Is there is the 3-year average sits at $2,020. So is the 3-year average, even though everything's zero here, you're running at the 3-year average is actually higher than the 1 year in 2022 that was budgeted $2,020. So, does that mean are the 3-year averages calculated out of 3-year actuals or 3 years budgeted?
Typically 3 years budget. Yeah. We don't, only because the average should be, we use a 5-year, no, we're right, 3-year actual. Yeah.
The actual,
Wouldn't it be on actual though?
Shouldn't it be actual?
Yeah, because what we try to do, right, based on, we do the 3 previous years, right? And actually, sorry, we use the current year.
3-year budget, so budget 2021, 2020,
Well, if
and
there's an actual in
2019.
2020.
Must have been high.
No, I'm really, I'd have to double check that, Your Worship.
We
like 10,000.
were a little hard on the puppies in 2020, if that's the case, but
And that's possible. I do remember we did have a year where people were dropping off animals and the vet was dealing with them, but typically we don't euthanize them. Now, part of that boarding is we do board them at.
it really, the question in my case wasn't around the euthanasia or
Yeah.
dogs or anything, it was really around the calculation of the 3-year.
And again, we'll
Is it out of the
double
actual
check,
or is it
but
out
I'm
of the
pretty sure it's a 3-year actual average.
Okay,
That's what it says.
2020 was,
Yeah,
It says actual average.
because I
Right.
know,
At the top.
I know I
2020
wanted
was
it a
rough.
5-year.
Very.
okay. Anything further?
I apologize, I had one more question that I had missed. On page number 6, underneath grants and transfers, requisitions, we've been budgeting on or around $5.2 to $5.4 million in recs. Our actual for 2022 is only 3.96. I'm just wondering, is that just because there's $1.4 million worth of requisitions that haven't occurred against that account? Or
At the end of the year, yep.
it's
December
the end of the year, so, okay. Okay, that's all I needed to know, thank you.
Council Dean?
And unfortunately, I have to ask this question as well. So the top of page 3 of 7, wages. So the actual in '22 was 4 million, and we're budgeting 5 million. Where is that extra $1 million going? We're $500,000 below budget in '22, but we're budgeting another 500,000.
Yeah. So, your worship, members of council, there are 2.5, 3 positions, 3.5 positions added in this year's budget. The finance manager, the manager, or not manager, the asset management coordinator, a new person for infrastructure, and a half-time replacement of the asset person. So that number would add up.
To about
Some of that
$500,000.
portion, yeah, be pretty close to $500,000.
Yeah.
And is that number captured inside the monies that council added to administration?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was actually talking about this the other day, for those on council that are wondering about some of the positions and things, and I know it goes back a little bit in history, but I don't think we've had a presentation on the org review that was undertaken back in 19.
When did we go through? Yes, 219, it was started, and at the end, it was done, and I've done the review.
Yeah, so just for the history part of it, the organizational review recommended the addition of a few positions. We ended up cutting 11,
Yeah,
overdoing it a little bit.
There was 13 positions cut and reallocated to, so it was 11.
And the recommendation of the org review is to actually add a few from the previous numbers, so that org review might be something that new council wants to have a look at. Not that it's current, but it gives you an idea of how well staff's done with what they've had available. So. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Nope, Your Worship, I believe I answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, move us on.
So, Your Worship, members of council, if you can go to the next slide, I believe one more. Yes, that one. So as part of the reallocation of the uncollectible allowance, council has that chart that is in front of you that was allocated. One of the things we did miss, and we have noted it in red there, there was a request earlier in the spring for the White Court Curling Club in the amount of $20,780. That wasn't considered. Administration unfortunately forgot about that and now was reminded of it. So we want to make sure that council, if they are considering to do that, that would be an adjustment to the budget or a removal or some other expenditures removed as well. But so everything that council has asked, and if you notice, they removed the new airport facility protection and plan RFP was removed, and that was estimated at $75,000. And like I said, tomorrow council will consider adopting or entering into an agreement for it.
Okay. Councilor Wilhelm.
So just from my understanding on this page, the budget that's presented now, all the top items are included in this budget. The bottom items, you're asking for an additional funding towards that, or?
No, simply were the ones that didn't make the list.
Okay, we've cut those.
So
Okay.
the ones where it says additional resources included in the operating budget, everything above that was included and has been accounted for in the operating budget that is in your binder. Anything below that has not made the 2023 budget.
Anything below it has not made the 2023.
Is not in the 2023 budget.
So the curling club grant is not in the 2023
No,
budget yet?
but
Okay.
we would need to bring that to council's attention to see if there's some merit to put it in the line above, and then either we have to make adjustments for it.
Lost our ditching program.
This is what was decided in October.
Any other questions?
No questions other than Kate's comment. I remember the Waco Grilling Club coming and doing that presentation for us, and they were in pretty dire straits, I believe, when they had come to us.
They did get a grant, not from us, but they did get a grant. I remember reading that article.
The town has provided them with some funding.
Okay. Let's have a look at that number tomorrow.
Or on Thursday, we can
Is it
do,
tomorrow morning?
you want it on the budget, or on the council?
Just council meeting tomorrow morning.
Oh, right, council meeting tomorrow. I should know that. Excuse me. Do you want it on the council meeting tomorrow? Is that what you asked?
No, we thought if council believes that there's some merit in regards to, we didn't provide you with the details because based on their ask was that they were out of money and they needed money to operate for this year, 2022 and / 2023. And they were seeking $20,880.
Okay. I'd have to see that presentation again, like that RFP. I just can't remember.
We can quickly add it to the agenda. And your worship, members of council, the intent of tonight and Thursday's meeting is to make any adjustments. And then on December 21st, and yes, we are having a council meeting on December 21st, even though your bylaw says you're not, only have one council meeting. So we will tomorrow ask for a December 21st council meeting, to adopt the budget with the amendments or as required.
Well, that's good. We're having a Christmas party after.
And we are.
Let's add, I think we should add it.
Yeah, I think it's fair that we, see if we can find that or that request and bring it back in again, because I seem to remember we were looking at a percentage and an overall ask, and I don't know if it was quite, 20 might have been the total, but I'm not.
No, this was our share.
Okay.
They were asking for 53.
That was 50% of the value they were requesting. The town paid that same value in September to the club.
So they paid 20?
Yeah, that same value, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, yeah, let's have a look at it tomorrow. We'll add it as a.
Yep.
We'll remember this discussion when we go to add it. Anything else? All right, keep us going forward, Mr. Frank.
Well, your worship, members of council, we can get into the details in regards to each of the departments, starting with council and ledge services, and again, with the understanding that the PowerPoint presentation that is included in your package is the highlights, and if there are any questions in regards to what we did, for example, in ledge services, this is where we stuck your 75,000 for the Centennial grant. Bicentennial, sorry, and the municipal census. There are also, we found that there was about $18,000 low in your benefits, as well as your mileage and subsistence has gone up due to your becoming more active in in-person meetings, and mileage and subsistence are required for that.
Okay. Any questions?
Oh, I guess
Go ahead.
the first line on this expense changes from 2022 to 2023 budget. What's in, I apologize if you just said this, but what is incentive? What's that line item?
What is what?
Incentive?
Incentives?
It's the first line on, so if you scroll, it would be page, 14. Page 15 or 14 in the presentation.
Oh, I'm on page 20. I can tell you it's the incentive to pay early, tax incentive.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We've eliminated that.
Council? Further? Councilor Cool?
Just a question, are we gonna ask questions on the things that we flagged as we go? Because if nobody's asking a question, I'm further down the line with some, I'm not sure. I'm already into the fire protection piece, I just had a couple questions there.
We're kind of going section by section, I think, so
Okay.
if there's nothing on this one, I'll go to the next section. Nothing further on this tab? Yes?
Your worship would move into administration and, again, keeping in line with the financial recovery as well as your strategic plan and the reallocation of the allowance allocation was removed from this budget and then redistributed within the entire budget. However, there were the asset management and finance manager's position included, as well as the wages that were required, and then the communication plan, the Reeves update, and then there were some additional items that were required to that were either adjusted to show the actual expenditures, and that was wage benefits that were required. We were too low in 2022, so Mr. World made it a very great effort to ensure that the actual expenditure that is shown in 2022, if there wasn't a budget number there, he wanted to make sure that council was aware that that expenditure was occurring and we should have a budget number there. So that's why you see that some of these numbers are as well, right? Like the change in transfer to reserve surplus was actually 340,000. The surplus was actually higher in 2023. So we're adding actually more money to the reserve estimate, so. Yeah. And then but if you look, there's a $213,000 debenture coming off as well. So again, we're reallocating funds that are where the appropriate expenditure is, but keeping within the 1% increase, or if there is additional revenue, allocating it to the appropriate expenditure.
Okay, Councilor Dean?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just a question to admin. Coming back in our binder, the first section after capital, it's called Budget Summary by Department. So there's 3 pages there. Page 1 of 3, 3/4 of the way down, Administrative Services. It shows the revenue and expenses. And the expenses that were budgeted in '22 totaled just about 10.3 million. And what's budgeted this year is 5 million. So we're looking again in the binder, right after capital, it's called Departments Summary. It's a second tab in the binder.
Which page?
It's first page.
Yes. Department summary, right?
What page is that?
That would be page 21.
Okay, and Jeremy's showing that in the notes in the electronic form on page 21, it explains that. So, sorry, I missed this part.
Don't leave us hanging.
Well, I can't explain it. I mean, I can read this, page 21, but there's just a $5 million difference between what was budgeted last year to budgeted this year. And
Okay, which page 21? PDF page 21, the page stamped on the page 21?
PDF 20.
PDF 20.
Yeah, it says changes in budgets from 2023. It's the same thing that's up on the screen now on the TV.
Oh, that's 21.
It says 20 in the bottom right hand corner though.
Well, that,
Document 20, PDF 21.
okay, that's physical page. All right.
So the red numbers would account for the changes, is that correct?
Yeah, so we removed the $2 million and reallocated it from the uncollectible allowance, and then we also removed the $3 million of capital into infrastructure. So that's the $5 million difference.
Thanks.
All right. Anything further on administrative services? Everything's clear as mud?
Your worship, members of council, will go to safety next. If there are any questions in regards to safety, Sheldon is, where is Sheldon? There he is. He's gonna come up and talk about them or stay back there, so, right?
No, he's gotta come up. Thank you, Len.
You've got the next few anyway. Len, you can stay right there because you can
Perfect.
sit beside.
Excellent. We need support.
So, Mr. Shep has more, the next few ones, so safety, fire protection, then patrol services, so, if there are any questions on safety? Pretty straightforward. Emergency management? Pretty straightforward.
So in keeping with our current recovery plan, when we talk about life cycle planning for some of those things, like I can't remember how much we had to spend on replacing a whole bunch of cylinders. SCBA, not SCBA.
Yeah, well, we're in fire, yes, okay.
Yeah, SCBA.
Yep.
I thought I was putting a U in there, but I wasn't actually saying it. So are we allocating in this?
Life cycle? No,
Yes.
not at
Still
this
not.
point, no.
But we will be in 24,
25, technically.
24 and a half.
I'm hoping in 2024 that, based on our, funds that we have available, the intermunicipal agreement being signed and living with our commitments and any other, liabilities that we have that, I think that we can relook at our 5-year, plan. That doesn't mean, again, going forward, you still have to, basically, your amortization of $8 million, it's 7.9, I believe. $8 million is, you should be reinvesting in your infrastructure by $8 million. Right now, you're reinvesting at $3 million.
Right.
So you have to eventually address that at some point in time. And there's a number of ways that you can address that, right? So.
And to be fair, the effects of that are cumulative. So if we're 4 or 5 short for 4 years.
Potentially, yes. You know, and again, and I'm not, like Horse Creek Road, for example, we have a 20-year rehab on it. It's lasting 25 years, right? So again, so you and as the asset management gets, the data gets more populated and reviewed often, those numbers always get refined, and then that amortization may go up or it may go down, right?
Yeah, and more than anything, I'm just trying to paint a cautionary picture for council and everybody that, you know, part of the economic recovery was not spending as much on amortization as we should on the degradation of some of these things, and there is going to be a little bit of a catch-up period. So even
Yeah.
when we get to 2025, it's not like we're gonna be flush. That's all.
So we're at fire protection unless council, sorry, and I,
Any questions on safety? Councilor Cooper? No? Nothing? Okay, let's go ahead.
emergency management was the next one.
Emergency measures, I mean?
Yeah, emergency measure.
Yeah, sorry.
Quick, give me a 6-foot ruler.
It always looks like I'm leaning on, I should be like this, I should look at the calendar. What's that?
So this is the disaster service ops budget? Is that correct? Councilor Wilhelm?
Just from my understanding, line item 2-500-551, attractive items.
Oh, that one.
What's that?
That's a line item that annoys us every year.
Attractive items?
Somebody always asks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an
In
odd,
38 years, they've always asked.
it's an odd name for something.
Okay, that's a really good looking stapler.
It's never changed. Yeah.
What are we attracting?
Well,
Typically, attractive item is a consumable piece of equipment that has a life expectancy of 3 years or less, and depending on the particular department, can be beyond 3 years. But yeah, it's a piece of material or something that's required, that's needed, that isn't part of inventory, and can, unfortunately drop off the back of a pickup truck the next day or something.
So to follow up on that item, our actual in 2021 was $125,000, and we're not budgeting anything for that moving forward. Is that are we gonna, in a year, all of a sudden,
we're putting
we didn't
tailgates on all
budget?
the trucks now.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if that's gonna catch us up at some point, that we haven't, what that cost was in 2021, and will that similar cost might not be coming up at some point?
And what page were the?
That would be under the emergency measures, page 1 of 2, and 2-500-551. Which seems like a significant item to just have disappeared off of any more budgets.
Oh, it's a revenue of 115,000, is that what you're saying?
No, it was an expense.
It's an expense.
Materials and supplies, just above that line, 2-500-551.
Oh, there it is, material and supplies.
Yeah, I didn't see any notes about it, so I was just wondering if that cost is gonna come up at some point.
Your worship, through to Councillor William, Lan has your answer.
That one in 2021, it's for the audio visual
Oh, okay.
repurchase.
So it won't be coming up again.
No, it's a one time.
Thank you.
But the audio visual was funded through something else too, right? So there was a grant.
Well, that's interesting, why that was put there. I didn't, again, in 2021. But that's what it was, eh? So your worship, members of council, what land has, you have Bellamy open? Is that, yes, okay. So so land we'll look into our financial system and know exactly what the invoice is or the item description on it, so that's why she can quickly answer those questions, and I thank her very much.
So just the way that, just for everybody's understanding here, the way that would work, because there was a grant involved in that audiovisual portion, right? Part of the,
No, well, yes, your worship, you're right, there was, because out of that 115,709 would have been the federal government provided COVID funding of, I think we got almost 800,000 because we used some for Horn Road as well. There was some funding for that as well, yes.
so there was some funding that was also available, and that was a large, we had a
correct.
discussion around using that funding to equip the rooms for virtual meetings to run through COVID. It was all good. So in the 2021 budget, you would have seen, that would have been what? Grants, government grants?
Yeah.
There would have been a section in there, and
yeah.
then it comes in, and then it goes out as an expense under attractive items, but you don't see it as that being funded by a grant. You just see that grant as a bulk number kind of dumped into the.
Well, no, we separated, so 115,709 in 2021 was used,
Yeah.
right? Up in the line above.
Okay, yeah, right there. So that's 800, 840, the provincial grant one?
Yeah. Looks like, must be.
Okay.
Now fire?
Sure. Are we good? Go to fire? All right.
Your worship, you have the first question over there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Just say something to me. and I'll
Okay,
raise my hand.
through the chair to admin, there was quite a change in salaries and wages, from 2022 to 23, and it is identified to a certain degree on the other side, but I'm just wondering, it's a $150,000 increase. Is that added staff? Is that added cost of operations? And that's on page 1 of 1.
So this is the overall summary.
Yep. And it would be under,
I'm just gonna find the spot where the increase was because I think it's in general.
It's in the summary. In the electronic version.
Yeah, no, the reason for the increase, and I'm just trying to, I believe, Mr. Ship's wages wasn't budgeted for previously, and I believe the regional fire hall, yes, there it is. So you'd have to go to 10 pages in on regional fire hall ops summary budget of page 101. And if you look at the budget was 33,000, and we've increased it because the wages are actually based on his wage.
After page 7 of the first section. Again, that section. I didn't think I confusing it.
And if I remember correctly, Mr. Shep's wages were previously out of administration, which was the previous regional manager or manager of protective services.
Okay.
And we reallocated into that. to the appropriate spot. And again, when I say Mr. Shep's wages, they aren't his exact wage. They're a range of wages, so we don't put specific numbers in there so that people can identify his actual salary. That'd be a FOIP issue. It's a salary range.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
What's that? So it shows you in this, on the
Yeah.
electronic, on page 25.
I don't have the electronic.
You can go wide.
I can set you up with it if you want. I got an extra thing.
Oh, that's fine. It's right there on the TV. Yep. I can see.
Anything further from council? I'll ask one then. Excuse me, since we have, I'm not getting sick, I swear there's a story behind that cough, but I don't wanna go into it. It has to do with our fire services somewhere else.
There's water in front of you.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we've been bumping up against, I know we have a fire truck that's come due, and we have that fire truck in the budget.
It's on order.
It's on order, so it'll be here about 3 years from now. So 3 years from now, we'll see a fire truck. Like it's so shiny. Well, no, I'm not being
It'll be white
flippant
in color.
about this. It really is that bad, the supply chain issues that we're seeing. So, do you have a plan B and maybe a plan C? If we don't see this fire truck, if we're thinking 18 months and we don't see it until 3 years. Because to my understanding, there's an option that we can recertify the pump. And, you know, is there any, because it's usually the pumps that end up being the problem on the truck. So can you run us through that? Because and again, more than anything, I think with these supply chain issues, we need to be aware of this, and is there a way we can safely operate a piece of equipment a little bit longer in the event that, I don't know, another cargo ship gets jammed in the Suez Canal on the way over?
Yeah, through the chair to council. Good question. So there is ways around preventive maintenance. By standard, we need to pump test our engine pumps yearly, and we're doing that. So we're currently having a third-party company coming in and doing that for us. If a pump is failed or needs repair or packing needs to be done, then they send us a quote. If there's the funds that are there, we can, for equipment maintenance, we can fix that for sure. That's plan A, right? Plan B would be if an engine goes down, knock on wood, something doesn't happen that way, but let's say the fork goes down, we can always hopefully use another one from another station, not taking that truck out of service from that station and putting it over here, but they can share it, right, where it can respond back and forth. So there's always that sharing aspect of things. Let's hope that truck that we're talking about is here sooner than later. I've been in communications with them daily regarding the truck. We are in the queue. But yeah, preventative maintenance, 100% across the board has to happen, and it is happening.
Okay. Anything further on fire? Nothing? Okay, Mr. Grant?
Your worship, members of council, I don't know if you had any questions on intermunicipal tab, but fairly straightforward. The number hasn't changed in the last 3 years, and then once the ICF is signed, that number will be adjusted and going forward. And then we're on to infrastructure.
Patrol services.
Oh, sorry, I missed patrol services.
Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor Cush.
Patrol services, how much longer are we, on the contract with Lexington on that?
We are done as the end of this year. We anticipate on renewing.
Councillor Prestidge.
Through the chair to Gord. We were talking that Barhead was gonna step out of that program. We had a chance to approve.
Yeah, your worship, members of council, no adjustment has been made to the 2022-3 budget based on that. However, we have an increase, and we anticipate that increase to be covered off in the adjustments for 2022, since we just got the letter the other day.
Sorry, that's kind of cryptic.
They've given a notice to cancel the contract at the end of the year unless the new rate comes in, and the new rate is 21% over budget, so we, your worship, members of council, we're trying to talk to Lac St. Anne to try to understand their rationale before that, so.
Okay. Councillor Wilhelm.
Just a question on that. So will we be without bylaw services then until a new contract in place?
The conversation, your worship, members of the conversation that I had briefly with the CAO is that they would like to work something out with us. So, and unfortunately, as previously indicated in an email today, I'm still trying to reach Mr. Primo in regards to other matters as well. And I know that they're busy in budget talks too as well, so.
Okay. Yeah, because this is an area, this patrol services is an area where we're gonna have to look at. And this possibility, this ending is at the end of 2023 or the end of 2022?
2023, right? 2022.
To the chair, through the council, so the current contract reads until the end of 2023. That's what we have, 3 years from when it was signed.
So
So,
the
but-
end of 23.
Correct, but they've come to us with the letter stating that they are, as per the clause, excuse me, in the contract, going to cancel the contract unless we give them notice within 30 days that we'd like for them to proceed on with us at their new rate.
I see. And that new rate is 20%.
21% over their current rate.
Current.
So a 7% increase in the last 2 years. Well, 14%.
14.
Sorry, yeah. And then, again, want to have that, we only got the letter last week.
And does the contract include people, the equipment, the fuel they burn, everything?
The
Yes,
only
that's
thing we
kind of
pay,
understandable.
we pay a monthly bill for 80 hours per month,
Yeah.
which includes some court time, but
I mean, you can't get guns anymore either. I'm just kidding.
Was there a file?
I was gonna-
All right. Councillor Dean?
Just a comment towards the proposed increase of 20%. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but anybody that's paid attention to fuel prices in the last year, you know, everything, there's a fuel surcharge on everything, so it's pretty understandable. They provide good service.
Would it help if we got him a fuel card?
Your worship, members of, and again, we're trying to have a conversation with them.
All right. Anything else on patrol services? Sounds like this is gonna be on our plate again very soon, so. I don't see any hands going up, so go ahead and take us to the next.
Infrastructure.
Lan, you're staying there? Does anyone else work in this place, or?
I was hoping to laugh you
Man, you have all the answers. You got that magic.
You have the same one.
I know, but you don't want me in there.
Oh, okay.
Reallocate over.
You know, I think it's worth reading that first bit out loud. Infrastructure Service is responsible for over 900 kilometers of roadway within the municipal boundary, 1,800 kilometers of ditches, 79 bridge structures, 3,000 plus culverts, and thousands of signs, 5 grader beats, re-graveling on a 3-year rotation, 5 graders, 6 snow plows. Partridge in a pear tree. Councillor Koken.
Okay, I guess one of the things that interested me is that the contracted services has gone up quite a bit, which is, just means that you're contracting out more of these services, and just for the folks that are watching, us go through these deliberations, it would be nice to have, explain how you do that, because, the contracted services went up close to $700,000, so. And that would be on page 1 of 1 in the common services ops budget. So if somebody would kind of put that in context for the people who are watching us do these deliberations, it would be good.
Sorry, and again, one of the things, and I have to reiterate, Mr. World made a very conscious effort to make sure that if the expenditure occurred, that there be money in the budget for that expenditure for 2023 going forward. So these individuals are expending the funds and allocating it to the appropriate amount, to the appropriate area, and we wanted to make sure that there was money in the budget for that, right? And that if the money wasn't there, that it was put where the money was being spent, so. And I think that's one of the things that, and I'm just doing a quick calculation on again, overall, because capital has been added to this infrastructure budget. So the budget in '22 was $12 million. You add 3.7, it's within 1.2% of the expenditures overall.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Yeah, certainly. I'm okay with that, thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Wilson. Sorry, just speak up a little bit, because it's hard for me to look at these and look around the room at the same time, so.
Just from my understanding, what's the real re-gravel program and what is cutting it have, like, how does it affect our roads this year? Through the chair to administration, sorry, I should be addressing properly.
Which page are you on?
Well, I'm just looking on
Oh,
the,
okay.
The summary there?
at the summary there. If you go to the next page of the summary. Third last item down. So we've cut $454,000 out of the budget for re-gravel, and I don't know what program that is, so I'm just trying to understand. And what kind of effect that has on the roads.
I don't have that page. But you're,
No, it's part of your notes, right?
so you're talking about that you're, I'm sorry, I don't have that to look at, but you're talking about, is there a reduction in the re-gravel program is what you're talking about?
Yeah, it looks like the program's been limited for 2023.
Yeah.
I don't know what does that mean? What's the re-gravel?
That's what we do on that 3-year rotation that we mentioned at the start here. So we on an average, we will re-gravel, literally, we'll re-gravel the gravel roads every 3 years.
Okay.
So to look to find some money this year, and we had a pretty good year this year at re-graveling, we feel we can cut back on that significantly.
Okay.
And increase some of these other programs such as our, the culvert maintenance.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Nothing. Justin, go on.
I'm just wondering, in this, under increase in cold mix / roads, is that money we're allocating to the rehabilitation of cold mix roads back to gravel?
Where are you seeing that one? Sorry.
Again, that's on this summary up here.
Increase in cold mix - roads, so the area 03-32-69.
I'm just, is that money we're putting towards taking the specific cold mix roads and putting them back to gravel, or how is that program working?
I would say we haven't really budgeted for any cold mix coming up this year.
Okay. So cold mix repairs or?
Just maintenance of what we have as cold mix roads now. So that could be some of the patching and could be, there is a separate tab I think somewhere for putting in to gravel, but that's just maintenance of cold mix.
Just a further question to
Oh, go ahead, Councilor.
So, I can't remember we were provided documentation that kind of showed all the cold mix roads and had a legend for a timeline for when they would be rehabilitated, which ones were on scope for next year, et cetera. Off the top of your head, were there any slated for return to gravel next year?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, yes.
Okay.
No, then, yes.
Okay. So, obviously that work is not gonna be done until summertime. And we received significant feedback from residents that they would like us to revisit that program. So I think before we go ahead and give the infrastructure department authority to just make that decision, I think council needs to look at that and examine costs.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Through the council. The roads that you're talking about there, you're referring to that open house that we had in the discussion there? Yeah. So, yeah, there were only a few roads that we were looking at doing, and that was based on our assessment of the roads. If I'm not mistaken, I think the bulk of the people there were specifically addressing one road in particular that there was some concern about.
That would be accurate for sure.
But very small number of roads that we had slated for next year to be putting to gravel. But we could bring that map back up and you guys could review them if you like, maybe have a look at them in the spring.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. That, and thanks for just expanding on that a bit. What I recall in the discussion was that costs associated with maintaining a gravel road over a lifetime of 10 years may equal what the cost is to bring that road back to cold mix rehab. That's not a discussion for right now, but I just want to put that out there for us to.
I do recall that exact discussion. So there was that group, there was a couple of people about that road, and also the more significant group. Neither of those roads were actually slated to be put to gravel. It was just something I think that come up out of that discussion of putting oil back to gravel. So their actual roads aren't scheduled to be.
Sure, and fair enough, but I just think that we need to be consistent, and, you know, if we're re-looking at a policy based on feedback from one group of people, we should apply that same logic to everybody. And again, it's not a discussion that we need to make a decision about tonight, but that's why we have open houses.
Through the Charter Council, if that's council's intention to revisit that, it would be helpful if you gave us, you know, a month you want that back to council.
Sure.
Otherwise, time's gonna march on and we'll get to work and.
Okay, like April?
Well, there's a much larger discussion around that, which is that level of service and how are we gonna continue to pay for it. So there's, I'm trying to think of how to have this discussion now. We haven't got our asset management plan to the point yet where we can have that discussion around appropriate levels of service. We're not quite there. But the hope is that we will be there in 1 year.
18 months, right? That is what did the roadmap say? 18 months, wasn't it?
Level of, through the
Service.
Charity Council, I think level of service is something we're gonna be working on in 2023.
Yeah.
According to the roadmap, and that's part of the intermediate cohort that we're starting in January that ends in June. So they're gonna be helping us with templates and communications for that, so.
So I think a large part of what got us in trouble as a municipality was we were providing services that we weren't collecting revenue for. So it's, you know, we can say that we're gonna do these things and we're gonna increase service levels, or we're going to hold something that we couldn't afford at the time. But the question around that is, how do we pay for it? So where do we cut? We either cut, we tax more, we do a local improvement tax, we do something. So that's what I mean by the larger conversation around this. Councilor Wilhelm?
I think we could use, and we're getting off topic with the budget, but just with regards to a month or whatever that you're looking to have, or that we're looking to discuss this further, we could almost utilize this situation as a case study with regards to service levels and stuff like that, as we're waiting for more information to come in. If you look at this specific level of service, out of the services that we provide to our residents, this is a dramatic service level change from one to the other, right? So I understand that we were providing a service maybe we couldn't afford, but we could use it as a case study working with both asset management and infrastructure to say, we have this current service or level of service, we know what it is, cold mix, how much it cost to put it in originally? How much does it cost to remove it? How much does a similar section of road that is now gravel take to maintain for 10 years over a certain section of gold mix for that same amount of time? You can do a simple case study right there and understand the cost benefit analysis of taking that service level and decreasing it. So I don't think we can solve this problem right now, but if we were going to look at making a decision on something like that, I think that's the type of information that council needs to see for a decision to be made like that. And I think you could utilize this specific situation as a case study for both the asset management plan and decision-making.
And I agree, but there's more to it. So, at the moment, and you all know because you get the letters and you get the service requests the same as I do. As part of going through the cuts to the service levels that we did, we canceled our dust control program. We've got an awful lot of people out there that are, calling all the time saying they're choking on dust. So let's add $500,000 back in for dust control while we're at it. Let's add in, it starts to be a cascade in a very serious manner. And I understand where you're going, but we had to make some really hard decisions. And I'm hoping that we don't, we're starting to poke our head out of this, but we're still a long way to go. So I want to make sure as a council that we have the courage to have this discussion on a municipal level, like completely, so that we, and I guess the way I've tried to describe this to people is, your basic cable package. You pay a certain amount for your basic cable package, and for that you get 15 channels. You want the sports, news, arts, and entertainment. That's your dust control. You want a further package up. That's your cold mix. And each one of those levels of service come with a charge. And the charge isn't so much to provide the service at the moment, it's to make sure that it's there to replace it. And that's a large portion of what we're running into right now, is we provided a level of service and with no plan on how to rebuild it. We still have 24 million coming due in paved roads soon. So there's a lot of hard choices coming right now, a lot. And we're gonna have to start having that conversation with all of our residents, and from one end of the county to the other, around service levels. So it's, and I appreciate councillors bringing the concerns of the residents forward, because that's what we're supposed to do. But we've also got to look after the whole municipality and make sure that we can fund all these programs going forward. So that's my only caution on this, is I want to, and we will have a whole discussion on this, but this particular discussion is at least an entire meeting, at least.
Yeah.
So, is anything else, or? Nothing else on infrastructure? Okay. We've been at this for a little while now. I think we need to call a break. It's 8 o'clock. Are we, what time are we slated till tonight? 7? I know. I'm like, it's 7 o'clock.
I believe it was 8:30. I believe council wanted a 2 hour and 2.5 hour, or you 3 hours to 9 o'clock.
I'll tell you what. Let's take 5 minutes, and we'll get right back at it again for another 30.
8:05.
Well, 8:30.
No, till 8:30.
Break till 8:05.
Is it not 8 o'clock?
We'll break till 8:05.
He's just messing with you.
Okay, so we're back from our break. We had completed our infrastructure tab, so that next one takes us to airport. And we have our airport manager with us. I'll start off with a couple of questions. We're doing the land breaking this year? I don't remember that.
Your worship, members of council, that's a carryover and, sorry, not my, you have a airport manager.
I asked the question
Doesn't matter.
Through the chair to council, we put out a request for proposal for money to actually do the groundbreaking this year. And all the proposals that came back were well above what the money that we had available. So we've carried forward the money to look at doing a different method for next year.
next year is in 2023.
That's correct.
Okay, and then the number 4 was I thought we had already had a conversation about certified versus registered. Didn't we already do that?
I have no clue on that one.
Your worship, it was part of the updated airport master plan. It was reviewed as part of that, but this is to do a formal review.
Okay. So is there money allocated to the review? For certified versus?
Within our budget, there is.
But the brief conversation that we had and the consultation that we had said it wasn't worth it.
In 2019 or 2020, when that was our recommendation as part of the review of the airport master plan.
What was the recommendation?
To remain certified.
Right. Councillor Wilhelm.
Just to see item number 2, to obtain 24/7 cardwalk fuel services. Is that, did we actually budget for that in here, in the budget for 2023?
Through the chair to councillor, that would not actually be a cost to us. That would be us putting out a request for proposal for an organization to come in, supply tanks, and supply the fuel and run the entire operation.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Hogan.
I just have a question through the chair to admin. After that HM Bureau report that identified certain deficiencies, has there been a consideration for starting to deal with those in this budget?
Through the chair to council, I believe we did put something in the capital budget to look at starting the engineering design for that section of the airport, so that we can get everything kind of on paper laid out, so we can move forward with the different options and see what's the best to be able to get that area developed.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, the second question then would be, so the airport master plan would be a lot like an area structure plan. Is that kind of the way that you see this?
Through the chair to Councillor Colgan, so the airport master plan is a path forward on operating or a path forward with a direction of where we want to go.
Councillor Dean.
So, not to provide a history lesson, but the previous airport master plan, just to give you some background on this, included a development plan. So a staged development plan, and it also had an overview with cooperation, like a trailhead system with the Trailblazers Club that, you know, potentially could see a gas station hotel out at the entrance of Highway 32. So the master plan that was passed and adopted by council, I'm gonna say in about 2011, 2012, had a real systematic staged approach of what development would look like at the airport. And I'm not sure if that was followed to a T or not, but that's what it looked like at the time.
So, is there gonna be any land available for private airplanes? Private hangars?
That is the goal that we wanna end up with, right? Is that potential for that 7-lot subdivision that was developed several years ago? I mean, there's still 6 lots of that is available.
I honestly think, like, when it comes to the airport, I honestly think there needs to be a strategic plan created separate for the airport, because this master plan that was done in 11 and then the update to the master plan, we haven't done anything with it. Spent 14 million out there, didn't really do much. It's a little frustrating, so, and I honestly, I don't, I think people kind of thought that a master plan was going to take them in a direction, but I think council's gonna have to sit down and figure out a direction that they want, or that they envision the airport be. So that's where we're gonna have to go with it, in my humble opinion, but. Are there any other questions on the airport? Councilor Clinton?
I think I would just like to see, like Reeve Burrows says, I'd like to see a strategy that actually defines some of the, co-aligning responsibilities, the responsibility of the municipality, the responsibility of Transport Canada, and how we can separate those so there's no longer conflict, because that seems to be a place where we're continuously having issues. And quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of that, so I'd like to see some energy put into actually sitting down as a council and with the referral partners that actually have some kind of say over what happens out there as to how we separate that out, so those responsibilities are defined and that we don't have these issues anymore, because they run us into a problem, and I really think it's because there's some real lack of planning.
So, your worship, members of council, I'll remind that this budget was built on the 2022 to 2025 strategic plan and the financial recovery, right? Unfortunately, the airport never made council's priority as in to relook at it. However, administration hasn't ignored the airport, where we believe that small improvements can be making, and we are making strides towards that. And as in regards to Councillor Culkin's comment, is that's part of the AVPA, is that we will, once that AVPA is adopted, submit it to Transport Canada for their regulations to be ingrained into that, so that those conflicts will be resolved. Unfortunately, we don't know if it'll take as long as Red Deer County and Medicine Hat did to get theirs approved by the Fed.
Mr. Reeve?
Go ahead, Councilor.
To Councillor Culkin's point, I think a good starting point for that is to dig out that master plan that was developed, that was considerable time and effort was put into with most of the info being provided by the stakeholders out at the airport. That master plan looked to be something that, you know, the council, the day, and the stakeholders, there were 13 people at the table that helped build that plan. And it's basically sat on a shelf. And I can tell you that priority number 2, the card lock, was priority number 2 then as well. And, you know, we're talking 11 years ago.
Any other questions on the budget for the airport? So the revenue the airport generates is $297.13, is that right, the overall revenue? It's on, sorry, page 1 of 1. For the ops budget summary of 2023 airport services.
To the chair, between leases and landing fees, it's probably very close.
Okay. Is there a grant in there too?
40,000.
Oh, that's the town.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's not revenue.
Yeah, we've never got paid for that.
It is, but it's not.
So does this include the taxes for the lots that are out at the airport? Because we collect taxes for, so why do we not see tax revenue generated for, if the airport's kind of being held as its own little sub expense? I guess what I'm saying is, if you develop a little more land and we can never do calculations on how to break even on this thing unless we figure out how much of it we've got to sell, lease, develop, whatever it is that we want to do in the future. But if you're generating $300,000 in revenue off the thing, spending, so you got a net operating budget of about $700,000. But that's you're like, I've seen budgets in the past where we're even billing the airport road to the airport, right? So construction on the airport road is billed to the airport. The gates are billed to the airport.
The cattle gate was built to the airport, and that's where the airport road starts.
Right. So my point is, if the taxes and everything that are generated from the airside lots, here's the thing. So if that thing goes back to being a farmer's field, it's a farmer's field, or it's whatever, and all the aviation companies that are out there leave. They just go away, or they move on to private land that's not an airport, not commercial, not taxed at the same rate. So we lose a lot of that revenue. So how much revenue is generated by the lot lease, by
the taxes.
Taxes, thank you. By the taxes that are out there at the airport. And if we get a better idea, and I know it's an accounting thing that you want to put taxes into general revenue, but it would be nice if we could see a breakout of this so that we know how much actual revenue that airport's, because we tell people every year it costs us $750,000 to operate. It really doesn't. There's a whole bunch of tax revenue that we don't account for. And I still think that could be a lot more than it is and it has been, but is there any possibility of breaking that in so that we know we can do some kind of planning or some kind of evaluation for it?
Your worship, members of council, absolutely. You could do it as a exercise, and we have software that can break out that information and our GIS, and again, we have that capability. The reason why taxes are always in general revenue as a whole is because your services are delivered equally to all those taxpayers, right? So you've never broken down a local improvement or any other thing, because why wouldn't you do the same, if you use that same philosophy as commercial, why wouldn't you do that to your hamlets? Why wouldn't you do that to your industrial park? Why wouldn't you do it to each country residential for that service? Those individual exercises we can obtain through our software and provide that information at the time you're looking at your master plan or reviewing that, right? So we would never put it in each individual's budget.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councilor Prestige.
Through the chair to administration, getting back to that, we don't wanna break out the taxes for the airport. But when something gets done out there, like the cattle gate, we charge it to the airport.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's kind of a contradiction.
No, your worship, because you're dealing with property taxes which companies or individuals pay, right? So that service, again, that you're charging to the airport is for everybody's public use. We're just allocating it to the airport because where that service is identified, right?
So if that's the case, then how come we don't have a Fort Assiniboine tab in here?
That's what I'm saying.
And we don't have a,
Very
we have
simple.
an airport tab.
We have a water and sewer tab for Fort Assiniboine, because those costs are direct, we don't break away the taxes for those. But that service is for Fort Assiniboine directly, right?
And things are billed to
Yeah.
to that water sewer, but it's not showing revenue that's coming.
Not the taxes. No.
Yeah.
What you're really, your worship, without putting words in, what you're looking at is those that are out there in the airport, for example, is a local improvement. Why aren't their taxes specifically used to fund that airport? Well, again, so the question then becomes, in general terms, the general taxpayer, do they have a benefit for the airport? And the answer, I would say yes.
Yeah, I gotta wrap my head around that. Councilor Colgan.
Well, and I think to the point of what Reeve Burrows is saying, for me, it's, I get asked the question, like, why is it that we're $750,000 short? And I continuously say, no, that's not really the case, because there is revenue generated other than what you see here. So from what I'm hearing here, this is an accounting practice, this is just the way it's being done. If we were just to be able to understand a little better what those tax revenues are there, then we could say, yeah, there's another $400,000 that's generated specifically from that tax revenue. And I think that's fair. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to reallocate it. It's just is something that we understand better and are able to articulate that to the people that are being the critics of something that I think has huge potential.
And again, your worship, it can be applied in any circumstances, i.e. Country residential subdivision, industrial subdivision, hamlets, right? So we can do that, but again, the costs associated with that program, the past councils in this council has taken the position that taxes generated from the municipality is for all of the municipality redistributed to the programs, not to the individual. It's past 8:32.
Councilor Cush.
Just through this, I think what Councilor Kugel is saying is not changing the program or whatever, but just giving council kind of an update as to what that actually looks like.
and that's an easy
Yeah,
exercise
just
to.
something a little more simplified instead
Yeah.
of changing the whole
Yeah.
program across the board.
Once you've created that report, we just update it whenever council wants that information.
And you may have hit on something there actually with breaking out some of the hamlets as well. And we could maybe try this on a large scale and just break out the airport into two hamlets. And see, I don't know how to, I just came off of a task force and we were talking about trying to figure out a goal. And they weren't sure where the end of the goal was. They weren't sure where it was that they were trying to reach to. And they weren't sure how it was that they were gonna measure where they got. And I don't know how we're ever gonna measure if we're going in the right direction in these smaller areas, and overall, and how do we find that improvement in the hamlets, in the airport, and some of the larger type of areas. Maybe we do need to, and I know I'm getting off topic, this is a bit of a grandiose type of structure idea, but maybe it's a tool that we need to figure out where to spend the money, or
And
how,
again,
if we're improving.
Sorry, Your Worship, I didn't want to interrupt, but that's part of the asset management and the level of service that you're describing is, well, what's that cost and who benefits from that cost, right, associated with it, right?
Councillor Prestidge.
Through the sheriff administration. I'm not sure about the rest of the guys, but for me, I'd like to know how much taxation is raised at the airport, how much it generates in revenue to offset what it costs us. So when residents ask us, how come you got $750,000 deficit, we can say, well, no, there's $400,000 of taxes that are generated. There's $300,000 of revenue generated. So really, the difference is not that much, but it's for us to know how much the taxation is.
Well, also, again, and I understand the exercise. The fundamentally, and again, is those tax dollars that those companies that generate there also also provide services elsewhere, right? Is fire service, dust control, limited dust control. So those other services. So I understand that the question, yes, and it's an exercise that can be done when you look into the airport more closely, the master plan or the review. And that information can be provided.
Councillor Coolkin.
Well, and this is just a general comment, and this is really no different than, if you look at our road system, it shows up as a deficit because it costs us this much. We never measure the service that it provides. And I think the airport is much the same way, is that if we understand that, it also provides a service that you can't measure, we still contribute money towards that. But to explain that to folks that really don't understand how our system works is a little more difficult. So
I've got one more question. I know we were talking about, we weren't doing replacement costs on equipment and things like that, so none of our plows or airport specialty equipment would be costed out. But the asset management plan that we have, has that been applied to the airport at all? Like, I guess what I'm asking is when we look at this asset, because we were talking to an organization and saying, okay, well, we have this asset that's worth X amount of dollars. How much is this? Asset management would tell us that, you have 20 million in runway, and you have 10 million in taxiway, and you have X million in apron. And then the land is worth so much, and the surveys and fencing and all the rest of it, and by the time you're done, you have a $60 million asset. So, do we know how much the airport's worth?
No, not at this time through the asset management, no.
Is it being applied to the airport? Are the asset management practices that we're using on a road being applied to the runway and the aprons and the taxiways? Because they're a great deal different in the way that they're constructed, tested, and packed out. So they're not, you can't use the same numbers.
Your worship members of council, I'll have Ms. Kennedy answer that because I just keep turning to her and she keeps.
So through the chair to council, at this point, we don't have the airport assets in our asset management plan. We have 2 runways and there was 3 small pieces that we have added because they were considered critical assets, but we don't have replacement costs for them. Currently, we don't have their condition.
Okay.
So there's a lot of work.
Sorry, you
to be
said
done.
you have the runway and the.
There was, I don't know, is it E and F and something else? Steve gave me 3 things that we classified as critical, meaning like you can't operate without those entities.
Yeah.
But we don't have any of the condition data on it, acquisition costs or replacement costs as of yet.
Are they scheduled for 2023?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Like we need to put them in, we just haven't got to that point.
No, it's a question that kind of eluded me up until now, because sometimes, we forget, so I wanted to know. And the runway's going in too. Okay. Any other questions on the airport? Okay, it is 8:40 probably. Yep, 8:41. We wanna end at the airport or?
If your worship members of council, you have water and sewer, solid waste, FCSS, cemetery. You have a whole bunch left to do.
A lot of questions about the cemetery.
You're just trying to ask that question too.
I've got a lot of questions about FDEV, so.
9 o'clock on Thursday.
Say again?
You're scheduled for the continuation of the budget meeting. It's another budget meeting, but 9 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay.
Going till noon is anticipated.
Okay.
Anticipated, good. Sorry, a motion to adjourn.
Well, before we do that, I just wanna come back to this. So we had talked, when we scheduled these budget meetings, we had talked about 2-hour meetings, right? So, and that's.
2 to 3, sorry.
Yeah. But there's a big difference between noon and 4 o'clock. So can we set a time limit?
Well, what's it say on the calendar? When is it, Thursday?
There's 2 hours.
Yeah.
Cause I already went like way over on this one.
This one said 1 hour.
I know. Budget discussions, well, this one's only until 11, so you're okay.
Okay.
On Thursday.
We anticipated going till noon based on the rest of the information, but it's your guys' meeting.
Okay, no later than noon. You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, somebody give me a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
What? Do we need a motion for information on this?
Nope, just the motion to adjourn. You haven't made any
We haven't.
decisions, anything, you're just providing,
Okay, motion to adjourn accepted. Any discussion, no discussion on it, all in favor? Any opposed? Peter can put his hand up one way or the other.